It is a big launch week for Apple. You've seen reviews of the new M1 iMac, the new iPad Pro, but Apple has one more product release this week, the 2021 version of the Apple TV 4K. Apple sent over this package, which includes the new Apple TV 4K, and in this video, I bring you my review. So let's open this up while I explain what's new. When looking at the new 2021 version of the Apple TV 4K versus the original model, there are a few things that stand out from a hardware perspective. It now uses Apple's A12 Bionic chip as opposed to the A10X Fusion chip found in the model released back in 2017. It has an HDMI 2.1 port on back, supporting higher video bandwidth and frame rates. Wi-Fi 6 is now built in for a better wireless streaming experience with higher connection speed and more wireless paths to communicate better with your router. There's also built-in thread support, which creates a low-power mesh network that simplifies smart home device connectivity. Now, one of the most exciting features is the newly redesigned Siri Remote with a new aluminum enclosure, more buttons, and a vastly improved touch-sensitive click pad. Apple also included an ultra-high-speed HDMI cable from Belkin here in the box, and when connecting the Apple TV 4K to your system, you'll want to make sure to use an ultra-high-speed cable that supports HDMI 2.1. Setting up the Apple TV is incredibly simple if you use an iPhone. You just unlock your phone and bring it near the Apple TV. A card will appear at the bottom, similar to when you set up AirPods, HomePod, or an Apple Card, and then you just go through the steps and it'll automatically transfer your settings, preferences, and credentials to the Apple TV 4K, and that includes things like your home network, Apple ID, and device settings. If you use the One Home Screen feature on another Apple TV and turn it on here, it will then automatically mirror the apps and layout that you already set up. The new color balance feature uses the light sensor in your iPhone to compare your TV's color balance to industry standard specifications. Using this data, Apple TV will then automatically tailor its video output to compensate for any inaccuracies in your TV's picture settings. It doesn't change the settings on your TV or receiver, it just optimizes the colors in the signal that the Apple TV sends out. You can take a look at the results and decide if you want to keep the original or the balanced version. Okay, now this is future Andrew talking to you. I've used the Apple TV 4K exclusively as my TV and movie watching device for just over a week. It's connected to a Denon receiver, which powers my 7.2.6 Dolby Atmos surround sound setup, and the display that I use is the Samsung Q900R 8K QLED TV. Now, I reviewed that in the past, and I'll leave a link to that video down in the description in case you're interested. The only time I switched away from the Apple TV input during this past week was if I wanted to play the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5. Otherwise, it was all Apple TV 4K all day. Now, prior to getting the new Apple TV 4K in, I was using the previous generation model for a lot of my TV viewing, but not all. I'd use built-in smart TV apps for YouTube and YouTube TV, mostly because controlling those was way easier using the TV remote than it was with the previous Siri Remote or even the remote app on the iPhone. So let's start there. Now, I'll be doing a separate video on the new Siri Remote exclusively, so be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that. But right up front, I've got to say, if I had to use the previous Apple TV 4K for a week and had no other smart devices, I could definitely see where there'd be frustration in my household. Not just for me, but for others like my wife who would attempt to use a remote for the receiver, a different remote for the TV, change inputs to get to the Apple TV, and then use the Siri Remote, and then do it all in reverse when it's time to turn things off. The new Apple TV Siri Remote makes this all so much easier. Having a power button at the top to turn on the TV and the receiver, and that brings you right into the Apple TV interface is great. Volume controls with a new mute button means you don't need to switch to any other remote while watching TV. And when you're done, if you don't want to leave it running for those gorgeous screensavers that Apple builds in, the power button will also shut everything down. You can literally hand someone just the new Apple TV Siri Remote and they can power everything on, watch whatever they want, and turn everything off when they're done without touching any other piece of hardware. Even if you could do that with the previous model, it wasn't anywhere near as self-explanatory and obvious as it is now. Right off the bat, that's a major win. I never even felt the need to switch inputs away from the Apple TV or use a built-in smart app, again, unless I wanted to use a game console. Now, one quick note on a new Siri Remote. This new remote does not include an accelerometer and gyroscope, which were present in the previous Siri Remote, which means that it's incompatible with games that require that. Okay, now let's get into the main reason for buying and using the Apple TV 4K, that being watching TV and movies. The A12 Bionic improves graphics performance and also adds new video decode capabilities and audio enhancements. The interface is noticeably faster and you can open apps more quickly. Once you hit play, you get great true to life picture and sound. The one thing I wanted to try right away was the new high frame rate HDR feature. This is exclusive to the new Apple TV 4K since it requires HDMI 2.1. Apple says it's working with a number of content providers to produce high frame rate HDR content for the new Apple TV, including Fox Sports, NBC Universal, Paramount Plus, Red Bull TV, and Canal Plus. Now for this review, I downloaded the Red Bull app and watched some of the high frame rate HDR offerings. Now to be upfront, extreme sports aren't exactly my favorite content type, but it's easy to see the difference that high frame rate HDR makes. It works really well for fast-paced moving action like sports, and this will be great for the sports that you love. So for me, I'd love to see NBA games in 4K, high frame rate HDR, and I look forward to seeing more content created using this format in the future. Of course, other 4K content in HDR and Dolby Vision looked great, and the tone mapping of Dolby Vision no longer feels like it might be a bit of a chore for the Apple TV 4K. That A12 Bionic is definitely doing its thing in that regard. Now, one area that I rarely used previously with the Apple TV was Siri. It just wouldn't pop into my mind, but the Siri button on the side of the remote makes it way more obvious. I can honestly say that I've used Siri with the Apple TV 4K more in the past week than I did over the past 3 years with the previous model, and it works great. So obviously everyone will have their preferences for using Siri. But for me, it was things like opening settings or playing the latest episode of a show without having to navigate to it, or running HomeKit commands like turning off lights. One of my favorites is asking, what did they just say? Asking that question goes back 15 seconds in the video you're watching and turns on closed captioning so you can hear and read what's being said. Then after that 15 seconds is up, closed captioning just automatically turns back off and your show continues. Now, of course, you can also use Siri to find something to watch, get sports updates, play music, get the weather, and even play a sound on your iPhone if you misplaced it. And again, this may sound weird, but I do think that if that Siri button wasn't right there on the side of the remote, I would just continue doing things manually by navigating. But Siri really does add to the Apple TV experience in a meaningful way. Now, being a part of the Apple ecosystem, the Apple TV has a ridiculous array of apps, services, and games. You can watch live sports, late breaking news, access live TV services, and of course, dozens of on-demand services like Prime Video, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Netflix, and of course, Apple TV Plus. Now that the Apple TV has multi-user support, each family member can have their own account so they can create and access their own up next lists in the TV app, video collections, Apple Music accounts, video game progress, and more. However, app access is almost universal when comparing different set-top box options, whether it's the Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, etc. However, if you use other Apple services and then want to tie them all together in the TV experience, then the Apple TV really shines there in a way that the others don't. For example, you get access to your Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and iCloud photo library right on your TV. If you use Apple Fitness Plus, I'd argue that the best way to use it is on an Apple TV, which gives you the big screen to exercise and syncs the data from your Apple Watch so it can be displayed right on the TV while you're working out. Apple Arcade is also built in here, and with the power of the A12 Bionic, you're getting console quality graphics. I mean, pull up a game like NBA 2K21 on Apple Arcade, pair a couple of Xbox or PlayStation controllers, and you've got a great looking, fun experience that's still kind of hard to believe exists on the tiny Apple TV. There's also HomeKit built in, and the Apple TV 4K will act as a home hub, so you can control your smart home devices using Siri or from the control center. Now this also allows you to control your devices remotely. Even cooler, if you have HomeKit cameras or doorbells, you can pull those up on the Apple TV as well. Now I use the Logitech Circle View HomeKit doorbell here. I will drop a link down below to the review I did on that one. And whenever someone rings the doorbell, I get a notification right on the TV screen and I can pull up the camera right there. Now the new Apple TV 4K starts at $179 for 32 gigabytes of storage, and it gets released later this week. The 64 gigabyte model doubles your storage and is available for just $20 more at $199. Now here's the thing. All those prices are a lot higher than Apple's competitors in this space, such as Amazon, Google, and Roku. Apple is likely hoping that people will pay for the superior performance, easier setup, and that familiar Apple ecosystem in set-top box form, and they're definitely charging for that privilege. One question I know I'm gonna see a lot of is it worth upgrading to the new Apple TV 4K if I own the previous Apple TV 4K? Are there enough changes here to warrant purchasing it, especially when the new Siri Remote is available on its own as a separate purchase? Well, if you already own the previous Apple TV 4K, then I think the decision to upgrade currently comes down to the faster interface, better handling of Dolby Vision, the addition of high frame rate HDR, and better graphics performance for things like games. I say currently because we don't know what Apple has planned for the future, and WWDC is just a few weeks away. So if those features matter to you today, then you'll be hard pressed to find a better streaming set-top box that's as feature-packed and as fast as the Apple TV 4K. If you're a new buyer or you have the previous Apple TV HD and you're looking to upgrade your TV experience, then I'd say get the new Apple TV 4K if the feature set I described is worth it to you. If not, then like I said, there are other competitors in the market that are less expensive. There you have it, guys. That was your look at the new Apple TV 4K. You will be able to get your hands on this one starting tomorrow. Let me know if you pre-ordered one, and if you did, which features prompted you to make that decision. Drop a comment below and I will meet you there for further discussion. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I appreciate your support. I'm Andrew Edwards and I will catch you in the next video.